The soul's journey of atonement. The final question of every soul. There are mistakes that cannot be undone by an apology. There are ideals, once beautiful, that in the end leave only ruin behind. And there are souls who have traveled too far down a path called light, until they forget that the light never truly left them. If you have ever lost your way, if you believed you were doing what was right, yet the further you went, the more the world began to fall apart, then the final question is not, who was right, who won, but is there still a way home? This is the final chapter of the story of the Noldor. No more blood, no more swords, no more oaths echoing through time. Only what remains, consequences, silence, and the truth that every soul, sooner or later, must face. 1. The final cost, when light no longer saves the war for the Silmarils, stretched across countless ages. Not because of darkness, but because of an attachment to light. When everything finally ended, the Noldor did not win, nor were they truly defeated. They were exhausted. Only 2 sons of Feanor remained. One touched the sacred light, was burned by it, and cast himself into molten fire. The other that threw the jewel into the sea and wandered the shores of the world, immortal, singing songs of repentance until the end of time. None of them were freed, because light cannot be possessed, and no soul is ever saved by violence or by an oath. 2. The true tragedy of the Noldor. The Noldor were not evil, they were wise, they were creative. They loved beauty to its furthest edge, and yet for this very reason, they could not accept one simple truth. Light belongs to no one. When light becomes property, it turns into an idol. When ideals become identity, they turn into violence. The Noldor did not fall because of darkness. They fell because light was misunderstood. And from here, the story ceases to be myth. It begins to touch us. 3. Galadriel. The way home the Noldor missed Galadriel was also Noldor. She too left Valinor. She too carried within her pride, longing, and fault. But Galadriel stopped. In The Lord of the Rings, when Frodo Baggins offered her the ring, it was not merely a temptation of power, it was the final trial of the soul. She saw everything, the power to reorder the world, a radiant light capable of saving Middle-earth, and the most dangerous temptation of all, doing what is right through force. She saw another Galadriel in the future, tall, revered, and terrifying. And in that moment, she understood the tragedy of the Noldor. Light, when used to control, becomes the most subtle form of darkness, and so she refused. I have passed the test, I will diminish and go into the West. It was not power that saved her, but the refusal of power. Galadriel did not defeat darkness. She no longer needed to defeat it, and only then did the path of atonement open. 4. The way home is not on any map. It is in the heart. You do not need to return to Valinor. There is no land that can save a soul, if that soul is still running from itself. You do not need to touch a blinding light. The brighter the light, the easier it is to go blind. The way home is not at the end of a road, not after one more victory, not after one more sacrifice. The way home appears in a very small moment, when you stop proving you are right, stop carrying the burden of being noble, stop believing you are the bearer of light, because light does not need to be carried, light only needs to be allowed to be. Atonement is not punishment. Atonement is laying down your weapons, even when no one asks you to, and in that silence, you whisper to your soul, I no longer need to fight, not because I lost, but because at last I remember I never needed to win. 5. The final lesson for humanity, the Silmarils of our time. Humanity today holds in its hands new Silmarils, not jewels of light, but promises of salvation. AI, power, material wealth, technology, outer light, we call it progress. But the soul calls it a test. The tragedy does not lie in technology. It lies in the belief that light can be possessed without inner transformation. Humanity will not perish because of darkness. Humanity will lose its way if it continues to worship light that has lost its direction. The path of Galadriel still remains, refusing what is no longer sacred, choosing healing over conquest, choosing silence over control. And the final question is placed into each of our hands. When light offers you power, will you use it to dominate or to become smaller? 6. Closing. End Ciri. You do not need to keep fighting, not because you are weak, but because this war was never truly yours. You are not required to carry the oaths of your ancestors. Oaths born from fear have no right to follow you into the future. You are allowed to let go, not as an escape, but as a soul mature enough to no longer need to prove anything. You are allowed to return, not to a place, but to the original state before you believed. You had to become someone, right now, right here. Return to nature, not to flee the world, but to remember you belong to it. Return to silence. Not because there is nothing left to say, but because truth no longer needs words. Return to light. That does not need to be owned. Not light that makes you shine, but light that appears when you stop grasping. That light was never lost. There was only a moment when you forgot. You had never truly left it. And in this very moment, when there is nothing left to claim, the true path begins.